like a cellar door, and it was really deep. So they said that they opened it, and that when they opened it, it smelled really bad, like dead people, and that they find them drowned in there. So like with that being said, do you think that it's really a serial killer, or it's just coincidence that everybody's just dying the same way? You know.
I don't know.
Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Midnight Safe Room. For your safe and no topic is off limits. Thank you again for stopping by, taking the time out of your day to listen to our podcast. Hopefully, you guys are doing good and you guys are safe. Just right here with my brother. I'm gonna pass it off to him real quick.
What's up, guys? Definitely feeling good and refreshed right now after my morning shower, and getting ready to get this podcast going. But as always, we're really blessed and cherished to have you know what we have and being able to share it, or just mainly be on YouTube to share all this stuff and kind of like get it out to the people. But how you feeling, dude? How are you doing so far?
Good. Just a little bit of tired as always, but just enjoying my weekend with you guys. Hopefully you guys like these stories. They're pretty good. So we'll go from there. Thank you again for stopping by as always. Appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, so dude, a thing that was crazy was that I was like, ever since we got into this and started talking about things like this on the podcast, I kind of wanted to reach out to some of our family members because, like, I know they've experienced some things, and like I said, it's hard for them to, I guess, communicate with us because of the lack of technology they have. They don't have computers, laptops over there. I mean, they're poor guys, but you know what I mean. Um, they just don't have those resources. They kind of people over there kind of tend to focus on the main necessities. Like survival as in like food. Like kind of all that stuff. So well, mainly the main
The
things necessity.
essential.
Yeah, essentials. Not like as in like certain other people to be able to have computers, iPads, Xboxes, whatever. But even then, going back to going off tangent, so I called one of our uncles, dude, and I told him like, hey, I remember like you telling me stuff that happened to you when you were younger, and yada yada. And he was like, oh, like, why all of a sudden? And I was like, oh, I kind of told him why, and he was like, oh, that's cool. So he was like, yeah, he was kind of just getting himself situated, and he goes like, yeah, when I was in your, and it goes back to our grandma's house, dude. So they was saying that when he was younger, he was studying to be a teacher and all that. He did become a professor, guys, so good shit on him. But yeah, he would say that when he would study, that he would be in the kitchen, and all of a sudden, the chairs would pull out very vigorously, aggressive. He said the cabinet drawers, the cabinet doors and everything would swing open. You know, the door to go into his his parents' room and everything would open and shut. Like everything was kind of in an aggressive way. And he said that he would, run out or freak out, and tell our grandma or his mom, about it, and that they just couldn't find what exactly was happening. Because at first, obviously, at one point he might have thought they were pulling a prank on him, but no, like once he noticed that all those motions are all happening at once. So could you imagine like you trying to do what you got to do to study and just make it in life and be successful, and not only do you have other obstacles holding you back or making it hard, whether it be staying up so late, having to do all that homework, or he pretty sure he had to help his parents do stuff or whatnot, and now he has to worry about like some type of malicious entity or spirit messing with him. Like, isn't that insane, dude?
Yeah, no, that's crazy. Cause like I said, we've stated before, we do know that there's something in that house. And from what I've been hearing, I'm pretty sure it's like a demon. Like poltergeist. Cause if it was just a ghost, I mean, I would say it was just something like not as intense. Cause this seems to have a lot of energy, and it seems to have affected a lot of people. Like I said, we have a lot of stories. And with that being said, like he's talking about our uncle. We are gonna try to get him on the on video soon because our mom's gonna go to Mexico, so we're gonna definitely get him on video. So we're gonna try to install an app, and we're gonna do our best so that he could talk to us, and you guys could see him, and he could share his stories like live. Well, not live, but unrecorded on YouTube, and put it up for you guys.
Yeah, guys, like I said, if sometimes we don't disclose their names or say their name, it's just out of common respect to them because they had the decency and or I guess the faith in us to tell us what happened to them. So honestly, if we you don't hear us say their name, it's not that we don't want to. It's just respect for them for telling us, and just like to keep, I guess, don't really bring attention to them if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then going back to that, like I remember, like I said, I was over there for a year, but as a kid, I never experienced anything like that. Like the only thing that I did experience is like scratching. Like you would hear scratching there was this one day that I was sleeping on the bed and it was like early in the morning, and I started hearing like scratching. Like I don't know if you guys could hear it, but yeah, like something like that, and I was just tripping out, laying down, like oh shit. So then I just heard it a little more, that I just ran out of the room. But other than that, like like I didn't, like yeah, like I felt like eerie sometimes, like a heavy presence, but I didn't really see much, like not that I'm like damn I should have, but now like I'm glad that I didn't, because I was there for a year, dude.
Yeah, dude. And the crazy thing is too, like what he told me too, dude. He literally told me this, and it freaked me out too. He said, "You know what I always would used to hear when I was a kid too, and that's when he was a kid." And then I thought, when he was studying. No, he said when I was a kid. He said that he would hear the same thing when me and Serenity went with the cup on the plate. So I was like, "Ah, nah." It wasn't Cap, like it wasn't. They weren't messing with me. It wasn't from the other house. It wasn't somebody outside, and because he said he heard that. He's like, yeah, he's like, it was just unexplainable. He's like, my dad would hear it, my mom would hear it, and we just got to the point where they kind of like, and isn't it weird how they when people say that, like, we just get used to it. We get used to it. Like, how do you get used to those things? Like, is it to the point where you just get so fed up that you're tired of it? And like I said, maybe because it's not that, when those acts, it wasn't malicious, maybe. I mean, because in reality, yeah, what you think about it, and yeah, you see a cup and a plate go touch each other. Yeah, that's crazy, right? But how is that gonna harm you in a way? Or how is? I mean, yeah, that's not. You shouldn't be like, oh yeah, that's something normal. But I guess that's where maybe they get that concept from or something, or I don't know what you would think on that.
Nah, that's scary, dude. Like I don't think I could get used to it. Like even right now, sometimes we listen to like a lot of scary stories, and we listen to a lot of conspiracy theories, and sometimes it makes you paranoid. Like you're like chilling, and any little sound or noise, and it's like even dad said, oh, if you do this, you're gonna manifest bad energy and things like that. So sometimes little things like that, you just think about it and you're like, man, is it my mind playing tricks? And then, like I said, because obviously you give energy to things that you see and energy to things that you think about. So sometimes it makes me think about it. But I guess it's just our mind playing tricks on us, or who knows? Because obviously, you do manifest things and you give it energy, but we'll just leave it as in, it's in our imagination.
Yeah, dude. So even going back to kind of that, I remember you saying in like previous episode, I don't know if it was the first one or I can't recall, but about an uncle they had that was, really mean and cruel, and not only to people but to animals. He was selfish. I'm pretty sure you talked about him and how when he was in the restroom, something came out on him. I think he said like a demon. I forgot what, a demon or something, and he saw money.
Oh yeah, like he is related to us. I don't know, like he's related to us. I don't know in what way. Yeah.
I believe he's our great uncle, because if he's their uncle, he would be our great uncle if I'm not mistaken. I think.
Yeah, so just quick recap. Yeah, he did go into the restroom, and it was the devil that came out. The
Yeah,
devil.
yeah. So I remember him. He told me that, and then he said, "I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, I remember that." And he goes, "I did." And then another time, but he was also like a person. He had that persona of that big bad wolf, not scared of anything. Like, oh, you look at me wrong, I'm a, like those types of people. And and people around knew that he was like that. And like I said, from that time too, he said that one the same instance that in the bathroom it locked on him, but that instead of, well, in his mind, oh no, so this was the crazier thing, that when this time he said he saw him, or I don't know if he, yeah, when he said he saw him this time, he said he saw like the legs of a like when they closed the door on him and he saw him and he said he started hitting him, but then when he like opened his eyes and managed to see what it was, that it was like it had the legs of a goat, that it had like a kind of weird body, and that the head had horns, and that it kind of like the smell was kind of weird, but that
Maybe
yeah,
like sulfur.
I think, but yeah, that he described it, that he saw that his legs were like the borrego, like a goat, like of a goat. I don't know if you've seen they have like hooves or something. I don't know. I think so. And
Yeah.
then he said the body kind of looked not human like, but kind of. And then the top was like, he just noticed that it looked a little like not this figure, but like I don't know how to really describe it, because I guess he didn't look too much. But then he saw horns, dude. And so could you imagine like you're in there just to do your business and that thing happens again, but now it like starts hitting you, and then you see that shit.
Hell no. I think I would have like a heart attack or some shit, cause like I'm about it. Like I'll get down, but seeing something like that beating the shit out of you, like that's I don't know, dude. That's crazy. Like even the viewers, I'm pretty sure they would be like, nah, hell no. I mean, that's because even he was like a big badass motherfucker, and he was like tripping out. So it's like, nah, that shit's intense. Like it's I don't know, like I don't know. You guys could comment down below what you guys would do in that situation, but honestly, I don't know. Like I'm not even gonna cap and say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be tough as hell and stand my ground because that's that's the devil right there. So I know God is, God is great and He's gonna protect me. I know that like I leave my life in His hands, but that's like I said, my belief in God is higher than everything, any higher power. So
Yeah, and it makes you think like, dude, what do you do in that situation? Like, what if it's 5 a.m., 2 a.m., 1 a.m.? Like, you can't just Google like how we always do. Like, hey, how do you? My head hurts. What do I do? Or this and that. Or it's like even then we have the concept, or I guess of a kind of I guess concept, yeah, of like what we would do. Take out a Bible, start throwing holy water, start praying. And what if that doesn't work? What do you do after that? You can't just go to the church at 2, 3 in the morning and like, oh, like they're gonna open. No, so it's like it comes to the point where what do you do? Like, how do you combat these things when you're at that point of, I guess, being so restless, and you're just so done with it. I don't exactly know how. I don't honestly have no idea how I would, honestly. I guess my only solution would be leave. You know.
yeah, no, definitely. Like I would definitely leave the house after a while. Not after a while, but I think right after that happened, because I wouldn't want to stay. Like that's why in my mind I'm like, why did they stay there so long? And even up to right now, like they still have that house. Like I don't know, like that's intense. Like I would have like sold it or gotten it blessed or called a priest or something, because that's not normal, dude. Like like to the point where they're like, okay, well we just ignore it, but that's not normal. Like that's I don't know, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know, dude. Like, he did tell me a few things, but I'll try to touch on them if we have time. And I wanna, keep going back and forth so we can both share, stories or any type of things we know. But yeah, man, when he told me that, and I was talking to him on the phone, guys, like my skin from like, well, my I got goosebumps, and then from I just felt it right away, and I was like, man. But obviously, at the moment, I told myself, like, I'm gonna keep having the mentality I have instead. And even then, sometimes when I do tend to freak myself out, like I said, I always remember, who I believe in and what I believe in. Like I said, this is just how my beliefs, but I stand by that. Like I said, just like my brother said, God is really strong, and He's gonna do anything to protect those. But yeah, man, that was an intense story that he told me.
Yeah, and then like I was saying earlier, we'll get them on video soon. Like I'm gonna make it my mission to get them on there. Like I said, I'm gonna since my mom's gonna go, well, since our mom's gonna go and our dad, like we're gonna download the app, and then hopefully there's good signal and we could get them on there. We're gonna do our best to like get them some decent headphones and give them well the app on the phone. And I think they saw this little device that you could get Wi-Fi. So Yeah, like a little hotspot thing. I'm pretty. It's not that expensive. I had found them on like a while back, looking on Amazon. Probably like $100 or less. I'm pretty sure we could afford it and just send it to them. You know. So yeah. With that being said, there's a. Do you guys believe, or do you believe that you could talk to somebody that passed away and you would never notice that it was them? Like that they had passed away. Like you could have a conversation with somebody that had passed, and then they tell you like they passed away.
You like kind of speaking to the dead is what you're saying, like, or is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yes, like speaking to somebody that had already passed away, but you had no idea they passed away. Do you think that's possible?
Oh, or do you mean like, for example, like if let's say I'm talking to someone that I see at work every day, and then I think they're alive, but they're not alive? Is that what you mean, or am I getting a misconception?
No, no, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Like, I mean, it hasn't happened to me particularly, but I've heard a lot of stories and scenarios where people would be like, "Yeah, like I seen this person, or I was just talking to that person, or who's that person?" And then they'll be like, "Oh, that person's been gone, or for 10 years, like 15 years ago," like, and then I'll be like, "What? How is that even remotely possible?"
Yeah, so I have these little stories. So you know me, guys. I always have stories. So it goes like this. There's this guy that's he's about to get in his car. He's in his car. He gets in his car. He starts driving, and he drives by one of his friends, and he sees them. He sees his friend, and he tells him like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's all like, "Oh, nothing. Like I'm gonna go and pick up my son from school." And he's all like, "Well, they start talking. They start having a conversation about like, oh, how are you doing? How are you doing? How have you been? Blah blah. The whole thing that you talk about and catch up with somebody. And then after that, he's all like, "Well, where are you gonna go?" He's like, "Well, I told you I'm gonna go to school and I'm gonna pick up my son." And he's like, "You know what? Hop on. I'll take you." So he gives him a ride to his son's school. He gets, they're still talking. He's like, "Well, I'll see you again," because they were really close friends. He's like, "Oh, I got my number. Like here, right? I'm gonna write it down. I'll give you my number." So he wrote down his number. He gave it to him, and he put it in the glove compartment. So he's like, "Okay, cool. Like I'll see you later." He drove off. Um, and then fast forward to like a few weeks, and he was talking to another one of his friends. Like I think it was like a group of friends, and he was talking to them, and he saw that they were kind of like bummed out. He's like, "Why are you guys bummed out?" He's like, "Because we'll just say his name is John, because John passed away." He's like, "What do you mean he passed away?" They're like, "Yeah, you didn't know he passed away?" They're like, they're like, "He passed away in January," and then he's like, "But we're in May," you know. And then he's like, "What the hell? Like, how did he pass away in January?" And I just literally saw him like 2 weeks ago. And they're like, "Nah, like you couldn't have seen him." And then he's like, "Why? I do know that I saw him in January because that's when I bought my car." And then he's all like, they told him like, "No, yeah, he passed away." So he's like, "Nah, like I don't believe it." So he goes to his car, well, to his truck, and he opens the glove compartment and he finds the number. So he finds the number and he calls it, and his wife answers. And his wife answers, and he's like, "Yeah, hello." And he's like, "This is such and such." And then she's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, no, I know who you are." And he tells her, like, "So I heard that he passed away." And then she's like, "Yeah, like I can confirm that he passed away in January. But he did say that, that you were a really good friend of his. So obviously, with that being said, he wanted to say goodbye to him. And he then said that he noticed that when he saw him and he was gonna stop and talk to him when he was in his truck, that he was pacing back and forth, pacing back and forth. So I guess, he wanted to say his goodbyes to his friend.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder. Like, I guess that was his way of, I guess, finding his peace. Maybe he had said his goodbyes to everybody else and he was his last one, or even then it kind of makes you wonder, like, if it really was him. Like, you never know. But I guess the way he was describing him, you know I guess even then when they were having that conversation, it seemed like they were, kind of chopping it up, like, not really. He didn't seem to really describe as him being feeling like heavy, or those types of, I guess, things that people feel when a negative spirit is around or something.
Yeah, no, like I said, he wanted to say his piece, but that's intense. That's why I asked you, like, do you believe that you could talk to somebody that has passed away and you didn't know, and then I do have another one where they used to go to, I think it was like to work or to school, and there was this guy that they knew, and they would call him El General, the general, and he was well known around the area. So there was this kid. He was I think in high school at the time, and he said that he knew him as well because, like I said, he was a known well guy around the area, and that he saw him and he talked to him and they were chopping it up, and he's like, you know what, like let's get some something to drink and a bread, because in Mexico they do that a lot, like let's get some la lechita with a piece of con un pan, or el cafecito con el pan, that's like a big thing, like you go, you grab like hot chocolate, hot coffee, eat it with a concha, just chill, chop it up. And he said that they sat together in the front of the house, like in the
The porch, right?
yeah, the porch, like the little porch by the steps or whatever, and they were chilling there, drinking their milk and eating their bread, and they were chopping it up. And then he finally told him, like, okay, well, take care of yourself, like, make sure that you try in life and you give it all that you got, because this is life is short and we never know when, like, we gotta appreciate it. He's like, yeah, no, because he was in high school, so we gave him a lot of like, like a lot of confidence, a lot of like good, you know,
Like wisdom, right?
yeah, good advice, you know. So then he goes home, and his mom's like, "Why did you take so long? Where were you? Because she obviously knew around the time that he would get home." And he's like, "No, like, don't worry about it, mom. Like, I wasn't doing anything bad, because you know how Mexican moms are."
Yep.
And then he's like, I was just chopping it up with El General. Like, we were there. We got our cafecito and our bread, and we were just eating and drinking right there. And she's like, "What are you talking about? Like, he passed away like 5 months ago." And then he's like, "Wait, what?" And then she's like, "Yeah, he passed away. Like, so how can you have been talking to him?" And then he's like, "You know what? I did notice something when I was there sitting down. People were looking at me crazy." So it's just things like that that make you wonder, like, like you see people that have already passed, but you don't know, and you had a conversation, and not just that, but the first story, he wrote his number and he still had it in his glove compartment.
And it makes you think, like going back how we talked before. Is this would you consider this a gift or a curse? Because in a way, yeah, you're able to see and talk to, like, he was able to talk to that person, and they were having a good time, good conversation. And then, but on the other side, people are like just staring at him, and he's talking to nobody. So it like kind of goes both ways in that concept where do you believe other people too? Because back in the day, man, like I could be the same way. I could hear people when I would watch a scary video or a story. I was always kind of that ignorant person, or I don't know, really want to say, like, I would be, that's fake, that's fake. And I would just be like, nah. But when it would happen to me, I'll be like, nah, it's real. But I'm like, how would I expect people to believe me if I don't believe other people? You got to kind of put your shoes, like put yourself in their shoes. But I mean, yeah, that honestly, if I was that guy, like I said, if I was him, I would be freaked out the fact after. But even then, I don't think I would be. I mean, I guess.
Because he didn't mean no harm, he did it like wholeheartedly and had a good conversation with him. It seemed like both conversations were like out of their heart, and just them telling them, what, like, do good in life, do your best, just some good advice, that I think it was wholeheartedly, not just, it wasn't like they didn't feel the heavy presence, or, cold, or the atmosphere. Like, it gets heavy. Like, when you're somewhere that, things happen, like, you feel it, dude. Like, it's heavy. Like, the tension in the room, in the house, like, it's heavy as hell, dude.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I guess the only reason why I can't really say if I would be happier, or I mean not happier now, but like I guess if I would be confused in a way, just because like with understanding supernatural or just out of this world things, it always makes me think to like um I feel like bad can manipulate or mimic good. So I don't know if that was actually him or something trying to get close to him. Because like I said, you never know what's watching or luring in the shadows or what may have consumed the person. If like I said, but like I guess in that sense, he truly believed that that was that guy, and they were having a wholeheartedly conversation. But like I said, to me, I guess if after that I didn't see anything bad happen, like anything like, I guess, like stuff fall or anything like trying to hurt me, then yeah, I would consider it like something like as like man, that was beautiful, like a blessing in a way, because I got to see that person, and have like a really nice moment with them.
Create a space where people can wear their truth, embrace their struggles, and find strength in their darkest moments. We're here to remind you that no matter what life throws your way, you have the power to fight back. You can save 10% off on your order with Midnight 10. 10% off again with your order Midnight 10. Look at the quality of these shirts, guys. Everything about it. It just looks perfect, you know? The lettering, the graphics, everything.
Moment with them. And I feel like they came out of their way to come see me. Like they came to see me for a reason, and I feel like I would feel valuable.
Yeah, no, definitely, because they would come back and say their goodbye. So for a reason, they came in to visit you, one last time. So that is a beautiful thing. It's like obviously we can't explain it, but it is a beautiful thing. And also there was another story where there was this construction worker where they were doing construction work in a school, like the schoolyard, right?
Mhm.
And they were doing construction work in the schoolyard and they were digging up like holes, and he said that there was like huge holes, like they were digging up. And he said when they were digging up with um with whatever the machinery that they were using, that they felt that they hit something like metal, boom, and they hit something that was metal, and they saw that it was a door, like it was a door, like a cellar door, and it was really deep. So they said that they opened it, and that when they opened it, it smelled really bad, like dead people, and that they found like dead bodies, and they opened it. Obviously, they opened it. That's how they smelled it. Um, and in there was like clothes of like what's it called, like monjitas, like priests, like preachers, and the
Oh, the
mothers,
nuns.
yeah, the nuns. And that then after that, that they would hear voices coming out from there, and then they would hear conversations. Yeah, and then he said that there was this figure that would appear from there, but it was covered in sheets, and it would wave at them.
Do you think that they opened something, like they opened back something that they closed? Because I feel like that door randomly being placed there, to me, it feels like it signifies that someone had locked something away. And the fact that it was that deep, for some reason, it's that deep. Like, to me, I feel like I said, that they shunned something away, locked it away, and let's never open this again. But they did that exact opposite.
Yeah, and I mean that could be a possibility, or it could be that it was like the basement of a church. It could have been a church before, or who knows. Because back in the day, or even then, they would just knock things down or demolish it and leave it on the bottom. So it could have been it could be a possibility. And they also said that obviously since it was a school, that there was this teacher that was like pretty old, like really really old, and she would have conversations with people, and like she would have full on conversations, and when they would look, she would be talking to nobody. So could be a possibility that it could have that she could see like the dead that were buried there or something like that. So I just thought that was a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, that's pretty, crazy that you talk about that, because I mean, talking about like how you were asking me if you think you could talk to the dead. In my mind, I kind of thought of it differently. Like, if you would like to be able to have a conversation with someone who just passed, like not in the sense where like you're talking to them but they're gone, but they just like you're talking to them because they're gone. Reminds me when I mean, I don't know. Unfortunately, there was a time where it was pretty rough, but like I remember when our uncle passed away, and I would always be with him, before that. And I remember he he liked to drink, so he would be like, "Oh, so your mom won't see me or this and that, like go to the kitchen and get me a beer." And then I would, be just so nonchalant, acting like, just, and there I was, I was a kid, but I knew what I was doing. But there I go, just would get it and hide it in my shirt, or my mom would be like, "What are you doing?" And but obviously she's just like, he's just a kid doing kid things. And I would go take it to him. And even then, like I said, I feel like I had a really good relationship with him. He would always, take care of me, say, say really nice things, buy me things. He always, made sure I was okay. And I felt like when he did pass away, it was really hard. And the crazy thing is, I remember everything, like everything, like very exactly like when it happened. But even then, like moving forward, there was a time where I think mom told me that I would sit on his bed, and I would cry, and then after that, I would sometimes just have full blown conversations with, and what I would tell her that was him, and she would say like, "Oh, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to?" And I would tell her like, that it was him, and then it kind of makes me think like, damn, was that was makes me think like how you said, was that him saying goodbye to me? Because I take very vivid, but I do remember like me kind of sitting there and him like I guess like just playing with me or like kind of doing that last thing that he never like but he was able to like he didn't look sick, but it's like it was really vivid. But yeah, maybe that was his way of saying goodbye to me, because he didn't get to. Because yeah, I remember like I'm telling you that I didn't get to. Technically, I didn't get to say goodbye to him. So who knows if that really was him or not? Because like I said, in that time, I didn't. Mom said that I didn't look like shaken or scared, or she didn't feel like the atmosphere tense or heavy or anything. Like no smell, no nothing. But she said that I genuinely looked happy, and that because I was crying, and that after that I was having a full blown conversation with someone, and I told her it was him.
Yeah, no, like I said, how you were saying, I remember that too, because obviously I was a little older than you, so I do remember what happened. Around the time you were probably like 3 or 4, I would say you were really young, like not even 5, because we moved out of there when you turned 5, so you must have been like 3 or 4. But I do remember, I think we saw you. You were sitting down, because I remember that we could see your back and you were sitting down. Um, Cause so that room was kind of weird because there was a window and then you would see through the window and you were sitting down on his bed, just having a conversation. And that's when mom said like, oh, he's probably talking to, your uncle that passed away. And I was like, yeah, cause and you were in the dark, like the light wasn't even on, like you were like sitting in the dark talking to him. And I would assume as a child you would be scared because you're in the dark, but now you were in the dark talking to him, dude.
Yeah, dude, and I was scared. I mean, I'm not anymore, but I was scared of the dark back then. Like I was. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I would, if I saw the light, then yeah. But if I didn't, sometimes I would hold my pee or be like freaking out until I would like see a light. But that is crazy.
Yeah, no, so and that's what I'm saying. Like, this is such a like sensitive topic because your loved ones or your best friends or someone that's really close to you, like they come and they say their goodbyes, because they couldn't say goodbye, when they pass. So it's just, I guess, a way of them to go peacefully and for them to go for where they need to go, and just. But to me, it's a beautiful thing, because they chose you for a reason, so that's something that I admire.
Yeah, no. Like I said, I think about it now, and at one point it freaked me out, but and then now it's like I'm glad. I guess I'm glad it happened because if it really was him, which I do believe it was, I'm glad he did say, he stopped by and because I mean, he made me feel safe, dude. So it was like, I guess it was a really nice, eerie moment, but to me, it was like something really nice.
Yeah, even with dad, like I know that dad grew up with his grandparents. He didn't really grow up as much with his parents, but he had a really good relationship with his grandparents, with his grandma, with his grandpa, but especially with his grandma, and then this goes to another story. Like, I don't know if I already said it, but you know, it goes like he grew up with his grandma a lot, and she protected him. Like, it was like his grandparents were his parents, like 100%. So she ended up passing away. Unfortunately, my great grandmother, she passed away. Um, and they went to bury her. So there was this lady that lived, I think, on the first floor, and the lady was washing her clothes, and she said that she heard the door open. Somebody walked up the stairs, And our great grandmother was there, and she was started talking to her like, "Oh, how are you? How's your day?" And they were just talking about their day and how they were doing, like what they were gonna cook. They had like a full blown conversation, and she's like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go upstairs to my house. Like, I'll see you later." So she walked up the stairs. She saw her walk up the stairs, and she locked up. And then like maybe like an hour later, or like so, like my well, dad and our grandparents walked in, and they were like really sad, they were crying. So the lady's like, "What's wrong? Like, what happened?" And then they're like, "Well, she passed away." And then they're like, she's like, "What do you mean she passed away?" And they're like, "Yeah, like we literally just buried her." And then she like, "But how is that possible? Like, she came up, she opened the door, and she was talking to me. Like, I saw her, like she went up the stairs and she went into the house and she closed the door." It's things like that. And even dad says that like I shouldn't have gone to bury her. Like, I should have stayed. Like, I could have seen her one more time to say my goodbyes. And up to this day, he tells us all the time. Well, he tells me, he's like, I should have just stayed. Like, I shouldn't have gone. Because I loved her so much, and he still loves her. And like, she was a big part of his life. So it's just things like that. Like, obviously it was out of his control. Like, he didn't know what was gonna happen, but it's just things that we can't explain. Stories, and just like I said, talking to our loved ones. And like, hopefully, if something like that ever happens, our family members, because unfortunately we're not all going to be here for the rest of our lives. Like, obviously we would like to, but we're not. And I would feel blessed if our family members came and say goodbye to me, because like I said, it would be like such a powerful thing and a beautiful thing, because they chose you for a certain reason.
Yeah, didn't it, you talking about that? Well, like I said, it reminds me of another story that our uncle, when he was telling me, when I said I called him, and he said, oh, this was actually another, well, just a little side note. Obviously, they had that house was really big, and in Mexican households or families, I don't know, they're, well, Mexican families or Hispanic Latinos, a lot of them tend to like have that unity, or sometimes they tend to stick together a lot, whether they're for a really long time, whether they're like 20, 30, 40 years old, but yeah, so they were at a point in time, unfortunately, my grandfather passed away. um and then um my there was a time where, yeah, well, he had just passed away, and my uncle was with our grandma, and that they were getting ready for bed, and their room is like, the room is right there, like the bed is, and then there's a bathroom, but by the bathroom, like, there's a little drawer, like, and there's a mirror. But going to the kitchen, you have to go towards this like kind of tiny little step, or like a little hallway, but it's like small, and the door's right there. And they both said that at the same time they saw a shadow, like they saw a shadow, but they saw it from the mirror, and they said that it was the same height as, like, our grandfather. And I told them, like, so you guys didn't feel any type of like negative presence or cold, like, kind of those typical things, like, was it cold, did you get a certain smell, did it make you feel nauseous, your head hurt, anything? And they said no, that it actually felt, you know like, kind of like they kind of felt like tranquilos, in a way, I call them peace. And yeah, that right away, even my grandma looked at him and said, "Did you see that?" And he said, "Yeah, I saw that." And that, he opened the door, and no, there was nobody. I mean, in that sense, who knows what it was, but in their mind, I don't know if they thought it was him, because, like I said, they said the shadow they saw was kind of his stature. But even then, dude, I remember, I was telling mom about it too, and she told me, yeah, that when he had passed away, and she went back, to obviously, I guess, visit them and everything, with all that going on, and that she, on their bed where her grandma and her grandpa would lay down or sleep, that she laid on grandma's side. She remembers that she said she laid down, and that she said nobody was there, and that literally that she, when she was like falling asleep, that she felt someone come in the room, and they got on the bed, but really, really lightly, like if they don't want to wake you up, and that they laid down and that she felt like someone put their arm around them and hugged them, and that she exhaled and that she felt like, oh, she's like, it's my dad. And I was like, damn, that that's crazy. Like, she even said it. She's like, she's like, yo soy miedosa, like she's a scaredy cat. And she's like, but when I felt that, she's like, I'm pretty sure it was him. But yeah, she's described it as like a really, calming moment. And like, when he got on the bed, he was really like easy with it. He didn't, and even then, he like, she said she felt the notion of someone turning still, and then putting their arm around her, and then like making her feel, I guess, safe.
Yeah, dude. Like all these stories, like I said, they're pretty intense. But I mean, at least it's not like they're not like per se, malicious. Yeah. So it's like like yeah, it's something we can't explain. You know. So, but at the same time, like like I said, it's a beautiful thing. And what's it called? Talking about serial killers. Obviously we're from Chicago, so I was thinking about that. And I kind of wanted to bring it up because I'm really interested in that, topic. So here in Chicago, they actually found a lot of bodies dumped in the water, but if I'm not mistaken, it's like men, you
Yeah,
know.
I think so.
But like the thing that like kind of like gets me thinking about it, because they say that it's not, obviously they say that it's not a serial killer, that they just find them in the water, in the lake. But I kind of was just like wondering, like to me in my head, it makes sense because it's like a pattern, Like they keep finding the bodies the same way. Like I don't know how or what they do to them, but they just throw them in the lake and they found them. They find them drowned in there. So like with that being said, do you think that it's really a serial killer, or it's just coincidence that everybody's just dying the same way? You know?
Um, I don't know. I mean, there is something going on definitely here with that. I remember reading about that, and I think they kind of were trying to correlate it with the Smiley Face Killer. I think, but that was from like New York. But the thing that they say that they believe that it might be that person or someone that may be inspired by that, or who knows? Because from what I read, they said there's no evidence that it's linked to one. So, um, but people are getting that concept that it's that Smiley Face Killer person because, like I said, it was like that in New York. I believe there was a detective that was kind of on that, and would find bodies in the water, and they were young men, and like kind of in that same scenario. The only thing for those that is after that, I think they would draw like a smiley face where they would find them dead. So, um, I do think like, do I think there might be someone like taking people's lives? Yes. Is it the same person? Maybe. Could it be someone new that I feel like there's just those people that I don't know. They'll read on things or they'll look on things and they'll get inspired by that, and then next thing you know, they want to be the next Jeffrey Dahmer or the next this person. And yeah, I feel like then they try to pursue that thing, and then they take that risk.
Yeah, guys, and they never arrested anybody from what I know. From all the killings and the murders, like they never arrested anybody if I'm not mistaken. Um, Cause yeah, no, it's a theory that's been going on. Like it says that, like you said, intoxications or things of that sort. Cause that's what they say. Like, oh, maybe they were just drunk and they fell into the lake. But that's a lot of drunk people falling into the lake now. Like I said, it's too much of a coincidence. Like I think maybe, and that's just me thinking. Obviously, I think maybe he or she drugs them. I mean, it could be a girl, that hates men, because I do know that it's guys that they find. So for all you know, maybe she like lures them in and she like roofies them and then she just throws them in the lake. And it could be a possibility that I think it was like in the 1990 something over there to the 2000s for the Smiley Face Killer from New York. Like he would draw the smiley face, like you said. So I don't know. Maybe that person traveled over here to Chicago. Now they're doing that here. Like who knows? But definitely it's an interesting topic that I like to discuss. That's why I brought it up, because like I'm into all that mystery murder stuff. So like I said, that one is definitely interesting. Like I said, nobody has been arrested or convicted of that. So just be careful, guys, out there, if you're drinking and being up, late, walking late alone. So always, if you drink, walk in groups, and just take care of each other, because you don't want to end up in the river and they just say that it's you because you were drunk.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I think even recently they found one in Aurora or something. I don't know. I can't remember exactly where, but they found another body of I believe a younger male again. Like I said, I just think it's too coincidental for it to always be like that. But then again, it's like you go back to the simple fact that in movies they would do that, or back in the day, like you would hear when there was like mafias and all that, and they would be like put a cinder block on them, and toss them there. So it could just be like a common thing people do, because they feel like that'll get rid of the body, or it, like I said, it does have direct correlation with that person that's doing that. Like you never know. It's always like something that you want to kind of question yourself and think, like, is it the same person? Is it multiple people? Is it something else? Because like I said, for all you know, that could be just this whole different type of case, or of someone taking someone else's life, and they use that as kind of like a way to have the police or other people like think otherwise. Like I could be, I don't know, doing something else, but I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna use this, so it'll kind of lead them off me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because it actually says on June 12th, 2026, Chicago Police Department, they recovered a body of an identified man from Lake Michigan near East Grand Avenue in Streeterville, just south of Navy Pier. Authorities open a death investigation. So that wasn't too long ago, because we're in what, July. So June 12th, that wasn't too long ago. It says public publicly available information has not indicated that investigators have linked this case to the other deaths or identified a serial killer operating around Navy Pier. It says, although obviously online discussions have connected the incidents to the Smiley Face Killer. So, like I said, nobody's in custody, but people do believe that it is the same killer as New York. So that makes you kind of like wonder, just got to be careful out there. And like I said, I didn't know that there was a recent killing, a recent murder, or if that's what it is, because that was literally last month, if I'm not mistaken. So, it's really interesting just to live in a city and, you know, acknowledge or do your research and be like, all right, well, all these guys are dying exactly the same. They're obviously intoxicated and they're all, in the lake. So it just makes you wonder, like I said, it's too much of a, at least I believe it's too much of a coincidence. Like, it's too much, like too many drunk people falling in the lake.
Yeah, like I said, it's really it's really up to the investigation and what they find, or if they're able to find something. Because I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong, don't quote me, but I think I've heard that like when bodies are in water for a long time, they're like sometimes unable to determine the cause of it, because of it being in there so long. So that's why maybe sometimes they can't really have leads or anything. But like I said, it could be anything. I mean, the concept is definitely not. I'm not blurring it away of it being a serial killer. That's for sure. But like I said, you always gotta think about all the people out here. Like there's not just one bad person in this world. And we're not the only ones that read upon about what's going on. And like I said, I feel like there's people that are already bad, and they might use that as kind of like a little alibi, or like to veer people off. Like I said, if something's hot at the moment, people will use that as an advantage and disadvantage, if that makes sense. Like if there's like for example, let's, like I said, yeah, they're just talking about the serial killer killing the people in the lake. Someone could have gotten into a fight with someone, killed someone, and then they'll be like, oh, but I'm gonna dump them to make it seem like it was that guy, to kind of be like it's linked to that, opposed to it being like just someone else did what they did.
Yeah, no, that is true. So it definitely, like I said, it's an unsolved case. So if you guys want to do your own research or add to the comments or like things that you guys know about that, like I said, we're always open to hearing you guys and seeing your guys' point of view. Because we're interested in that. So if you guys want to share anything, like I said, stories or add on or correct if we're wrong, just let us know.
Yeah, cause do stuff, you know, parts of people's bodies or things like of that nature, or whole like just the whole person in general, is not really something like too like that doesn't happen here a lot, or like doesn't happen in places like I'm pretty sure you remember this when we were like a long time ago when we were kids, but there's like a park not so far. Well, there's various parks here, but there's one that's maybe I don't know not that far. Well, walking distance it is a little bit. Yeah. Point is there was a park that around here that I do recall. And I would go play soccer there all the time, guys. Like I would go train there when I was like in the soccer teams, or go just play there with my friends, and like everybody would be there. Like they would have baseball games, tennis games. People would be walking their dogs. People were playing basketball. Yeah, so everyone would just kind of use that park to, it was just kind of like a really big park. And like I said, I didn't really ever hear anything happen, but I do remember one time, they said in the news that they found like someone's like head there, and I was like, nah, that's not real. But yeah, I someone that I believe our mom knew, or like even like the coach, they told me, yeah, that the person that they knew was they were walking by the pond and all that, because that there's like a few ponds that are really nice. And I feel like a lot of people do this too when they see the ducks or the ducklings. They'll just be right there and watch them. And I think that, yeah, they came across like something floating, and it was like someone's like severed head.
Yeah, no, and also like speaking of like Chicago, um, like with UFOs and stuff like that, I do know that in November 7th, 2006, there's probably like a dozen United Airline employees that they've reported seeing a dark metallic disc-shaped object, like I guess right there just chilling for a while, and then all of a sudden they just saw it shoot up into the sky. So like with that being said, like obviously you can't say that it was a hoax or a lie because it was like I said, like a dozen employees. So that just makes you wonder too, with like I think it was Gate C-17, Chicago O'Hare Airport. So yeah, no, that's another thing that I'm like, okay, with UFOs, like I'm fascinated. You guys can see it in our other, videos. So I mean, that would have been pretty. I don't know if they took video or pictures, but that was another interesting topic that I would want to talk about. Like I always touch on like UFOs and UAPs and all that. Like we did discuss in our other video that we witnessed one. So if you guys have any stories of UFOs, or UAPs, or you want to share videos or anything like that. But no, from what I know, I think there was no images or videos that were recorded. So just word of mouth. But like I said, if there was a lot of people that confirmed it, then it should have happened. But you know how it is. People try to see like, oh no, it wasn't what you think it is, or it wasn't a UFO. It was something else. But you know how it is. So definitely, that's something I wish I would have seen. Like maybe the workers or whatever, they might have like interviewed them and they could have said more, more in detail. But like I said, that was an interesting thing too, as well, with the UFOs here in Chicago.
Yeah, dude, and it goes back to like I was talking about in that park. After that first instance, I believe they started having more cases of similar things, of them finding, people's like it wasn't necessarily their head, but they were finding other parts in the pond. So that's what I'm telling you, dude. I feel like people get that idea and they'll use that as a way to, kind of veer it off them, or like lure it off them, or kind of feed on that lie, to make it more known that that is real when it's not, or if it really is real. Like I said, it really depends on the person, because all of a sudden that happened, never happened, and next it was not happening constantly, but it happened more often than it was supposed to. So that's what just makes me think, like the influence it has on people, especially if someone's not in the right, you know, the right state of mind. Like, your mind can do so many things to you that, the mind's a powerful thing, guys. And if you lose control of that, it's kind of, sometimes it's the end for some of us.
Yeah, I mean that is pretty, pretty intense that they found all those body parts in that park. Because like I said, you never know if it was the same from the lake or obviously it was different, like the way that they found the body. So I'm pretty sure it was, like different MO, like not the same thing.
And the scary thing is that it makes you wonder, dude. Like, like, do you really know your neighbors? Do you really know the people you're with? Like, that made me scared because honestly, like, I would be like, damn. At that point in time, I mean, not that I wouldn't watch my back all the, but now I would be the type of person to look behind me all the time. Like, then it would kind of make me paranoid because I'm like, I don't even know if I want to trust this person because like, who could it be? And you being a kid, it kind of sometimes ruins like the outdoor experience. I mean, because I mean, man, you know us, we were outside like 24/7. They had to always kind of tell us to go inside, and hearing certain things like that kind of ruin, your I guess your motivation to go outside.
Yeah, no, as kids we were all over the place. Like we would ride our bicycles like far. Like I said, I'm happy nothing ever happened to us. Because we were just all over the place. We were like ride our bikes like so far. Something could have happened to us, and mom and dad would have never known. But with that being said, is there any other topics you would like to touch upon, or do you want to conclude the episode for today?
No, I think that's it. I think, like I said, I do have other things to share about, but I feel like we can just do that in another episode and go from there. As always, guys, we do appreciate you taking time out of your day, like I said, to be here with us, whether it's to, just listen if you're working or watching the video while you're cooking or in the background or even physically, like just paying it fully attention to us. We appreciate it a lot. Always be sure to like, comment, sub, and even share it. We do appreciate it. Be sure to check out all our socials too, guys. And as my brother always says, if you have any stories or you could comment them, or you feel more, you want them to be in private, you could DM us. It's that's fine as well. And yeah, guys, like I said, I hope you have a great and safe day. And remember, this is the Midnight Safe Room where you're safe and no topic is off limits.
A red glow crawls